Start from the top. A lot of people jumping to conclusions, thinking that Sami Zayn is going to defeat Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. Why is everybody assuming? Why is everybody assuming that? There's so many people in my comments over the last few days talking about it should be Chad Gable. Chad Gable's the one who should fight Gunther. Chad Gable's the one who should defeat Gunther, win the Intercontinental title, yada, yada, yada. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. My biggest question to the fan base, to the, loud vocal fan base out there that have been in my comment section and that I've seen on social media, why is it such a shoo-in to you? Because this is how a lot of people are coming off. I'm not saying this is everybody, but this is how a lot of people are coming off, and some people are directly saying this. Why is it such a shoo-in for you that Sami Zayn is going to beat Gunther at WrestleMania? Because quite frankly, we are just over 3 weeks out, I believe, from WrestleMania 40, which I'm very much excited for. I will be at WrestleMania 40, night 1 and night 2, so you can catch me there both nights. Would love to say hello to anybody, but why are people assuming this? You want my prediction? If you seriously want my prediction, 3+ weeks out, I think Sami Zayn's probably going to lose. I honestly think Sami Zayn is probably going to lose against Gunther. Now, this is going back months, right? Back in October, November, I was here on the channel talking about how I just couldn't understand why Sami Zayn, and it wasn't like an angry, mad I can't understand, it was more curiosity type thing. Why Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens were split apart a month after losing the tag team championships. I've really thought like, well, just because they're not the champs anymore and they're not feuding with the Bloodline doesn't mean they can't still be together on the same show. Other people are. It's no different than any other team or group, doing their own things while still being associated together. So I was like, there's got to be a reason why Sami stayed on Raw. They sent Kevin Owens to SmackDown. Now, this thought is dating back to before CM Punk came back to the WWE. There was talk of the town at the time that CM Punk would be at Survivor Series, but again, this is going back whenever Kevin Owens showed up on SmackDown. It was like the season premiere of SmackDown, I think, which was probably sometime in September, October. So, sorry, we're getting a call over here. I'm going to have to face that down so it doesn't distract me. And the biggest thing was, I'm going to assume Sami Zayn, this is going back to October, November, what my thought process was. I'm going to assume there's big plans for one of these guys. As the weeks go on, Sami Zayn fights Seth Rollins. Remember back on Monday Night Raw, I believe it was like October, for the World Heavyweight Championship, loses. But I was like, why? Why are we seeing this? Why is Sami Zayn talking about the World Championship, wanting to be a contender, challenging Rollins for the title? Back in October, November, we were talking about here in the channel, I honestly think Sami Zayn is going to defeat Seth Rollins for the World Championship at WrestleMania 40. And the reason they split him apart from Kevin Owens was to have Sami Zayn go off on his own, be able to focus on that without KO, let KO go do his own thing on SmackDown, and then eventually when we link back up, maybe we'll get one more Zayn versus Owens feud properly under Triple H for the first time on the main roster under Triple H, and they can go off from there for the World Championship. Now that's a whole nother situation. That's a whole nother thing. Then we got November. CM Punk comes back at Survivor Series. CM Punk versus Seth Rollins obviously took the cake as the World Championship match for WrestleMania. And I think after that, Sami Zayn and what I think his plans probably were for WrestleMania, if you're asking me, just hypothetically based off what I am watching on my television, I believed Sami Zayn was going to fight Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. Then CM Punk came back, and obviously that trumps Sami Zayn, McIntyre, anybody else who was in line. Then CM Punk gets hurt. Okay, Sami Zayn's story could be back on. But now Drew McIntyre's been red hot. The heel turn for McIntyre has injected this amazing life into his character. Well, now it's got to be McIntyre and Rollins. And you had people for weeks, oh, well, McIntyre, he already lost to Rollins at Crown Jewel, already lost at day one. Every one of those matches, McIntyre has continued to evolve, continued to get better, and there continues to be a reason why McIntyre chases Seth Rollins for the World Championship. That story is unfinished, whether it was going to happen at WrestleMania or not. At that point, McIntyre was the obvious guy. Regardless of whether Rollins was going to go do this tag match on Saturday night, getting involved in any Bloodline Cody Rhodes business, regardless of all that, McIntyre was the obvious guy. If you're watching the television, taking favoritism out of it, because that's a big thing that pushes a lot of people's opinions, is their favoritism towards their favorite superstars. If that was the case for me, I'd be asking for Rey Mysterio to take down Roman Reigns, but that's not the case. So, you got to take that out sometimes. Drew McIntyre was the obvious guy to take on Seth Rollins. Where does that leave Sami Zayn? You had people saying, oh, Zayn should get added. It should make it a triple threat match. That's always people's go-to answer, go-to resolution. The Daniel Bryan yes movement really caused a lot of wires in people's brains to be rewired, let's say. Oh, the wrong guys fight for the title. Well, there's still a chance. Add him in. Add Chad Gable. Add Sami Zayn. Whatever the case is. Don't need that. Sami Zayn, as the weeks go on, and as the weeks were removed from the Royal Rumble, and Sami Zayn did not qualify for the Elimination Chamber, it became glaringly obvious, if you were really paying attention to Monday Night Raw, that Sami Zayn was drifting farther and farther from the World Heavyweight Championship specifically. However, if you were paying attention to Monday Night Raw, Sami Zayn continued for weeks to talk about his desire, let's call it, to be a contender for a championship, to prove himself at WrestleMania 40, to prove he belonged in the main event, to prove he belonged to be called a singles champion yet again. So now Sami Zayn has this match with Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. A lot of people saying that's Chad Gable's story. Chad Gable and Gunther have history. Absolutely, you cannot knock that. And that is unfinished business dating back to the fall. Chad Gable went ice cold in December, January. Was on TV here and there. Was wrestling the Viking Raid or wrestling Ivar. You know, it's not like he was just losing every week in complete oblivion. But he was pretty far from the Intercontinental Championship. About as far at this point as Sami Zayn, if not farther than Sami Zayn is from the World Heavyweight Championship. A lot of people saying, Gable, this has been his story the whole time. I would argue they got way away from the story, or at least delayed it, and over the last number of weeks, Gable and Sami Zayn have been on the same trajectory trying to prove themselves for a championship matchup. Gable just specifically saying the Intercontinental title on Monday Night Raw. But regardless of that, regardless of who's got the more momentum right now, who's got the more story right now between Sami and Chad Gable, I'm going to tell you why, in my personal opinion, why Sami Zayn is fighting Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. This will be the last time I discuss it here on the channel, unless the conversation really blows up again, unless television completely changes the matchup. Until we get to our WrestleMania predictions, this will be the last time I really dive in deep to it. Sami Zayn is fighting Gunther at WrestleMania, and this is what I personally believe, because Sami Zayn is not defeating Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. More importantly, to be said, Gunther is not losing the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 40. Now, let me also acknowledge, there is of course a chance that Sami Zayn will win the Intercontinental Championship. I'm all for it. If it happens, I am one of the people that is all for it. I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, if it was a week or two ago, I would have said, yes, Sami Zayn, absolutely the guy. But looking at Monday Night Raw, sitting with this over the last few weeks, or last few days, looking at SmackDown, and looking at what Kevin Owens is probably doing at WrestleMania, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think is going to be winning the United States Championship. He may be competing for it, but it might be in a triple threat with Randy Orton. They might do a tag team match, Owens and Orton versus Logan Paul and KSI, or Logan, Theory, and Waller versus Owens, Orton, and somebody else. Whatever's going on SmackDown, the idea that you guys heard me talk about, if you're familiar with the channel, of Owens winning the US title and Zayn winning the Intercontinental title and having this cool moment with their singles titles at WrestleMania 40, I think we have drifted from that idea. I believe we are going Sami Zayn versus Gunther at WrestleMania 40 for it to be a big match on the show, to get Sami Zayn on the show, because let's be real here. If one of these two guys is going to be left off WrestleMania 40, is it going to be Sami Zayn or is it going to be Chad Gable? Is it going to be the guy who main evented one of the nights of WrestleMania last year, or is Chad Gable? If only one guy is going to be left off WrestleMania 40, unfortunately it has to be Gable. I'm sorry, not everybody can be on the show. Sami Zayn fighting Gunther, gets Sami Zayn on the show, gives Gunther a notable opponent, a main event level opponent for WrestleMania 40. No disrespect to a guy I love like a Bronson Reed. No disrespect to a Dominic Mysterio who just wrestled Gunther a few weeks ago. But there is obviously levels to the game. And Sami Zayn is a bigger top guy compared to some of these other names that could have fought Gunther on Monday Night Raw. Andrade's just recently coming back, only had one match. Braun Breaker's over on SmackDown. By process of elimination, the field of legit guys for Gunther to face and defeat at WrestleMania 40 on the Monday Night Raw roster was getting thin. This gets Sami Zayn on the show. This gives Gunther a notable opponent to defeat and retain his Intercontinental Championship. Now, a lot of people think that WrestleMania is going to be the expiration date on Gunther's IC title reign because a lot of people are believing that Gunther needs to go on to Berlin, Germany at the end of August, bash in Berlin, and win the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, that's a great idea, obviously. Homecoming presence. Big moment for Gunther in his homeland. But if location was the determining factor of somebody winning a big championship, then Drew McIntyre would have won the title in Cardiff 2 years ago. So I understand that Gunther winning the world title in Germany might be cool on paper, but television might not call for it. Let's look at what the world title is going to be revolved around over the next few months. We got Sami Zayn versus Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 40, where I do believe Drew McIntyre will win the World Heavyweight Championship. We have CM Punk waiting in the wind. McIntyre versus Punk, as long as Punk is ready to go, should probably be one of the main events on SummerSlam this year. And if Punk's not ready to go, then that might be the world title match at Bash in Berlin in Germany. Punk and McIntyre, there's meat on the bone there, and the world title being on the line kind of makes a lot of sense because McIntyre getting Punk out of the way is part of his story towards the World Heavyweight title. Then there's another aspect we're going to talk about. We'll save that. We're going to go back to Gunther. None of these world title plans, possible plans, revolve around Gunther right now. He's going to be world champ eventually, absolutely. But everybody's fantasy booking in their head that Gunther needs to lose the Intercontinental title so Gunther can win the world title at Bash in Berlin. And they're putting this, loss and victory on this timeline. And I'm sorry, but you can't just revolve everything around Gunther's timeline of losing and winning. What needs to happen, what I think is going to happen, is Gunther is going to retain the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. And Chad Gable is going to continue to now start to build from the ground up to become number one contender again. He has the history with Gunther. Absolutely, history is there, but then he fell way down on the pedestal. And now, over the last 3-4 weeks, Chad Gable has slowly started to build himself back up. Victory over Ivar. Who the hell is Ivar? Victory over Ivar. Good showing against Sami Zayn in the gauntlet match, but came up short. Only at 3-4 weeks that Gable's been heating up this story again with Gunther, this history again with Gunther. We don't need it to pay off at WrestleMania 40. There's more meat on the bone. Let Gunther retain that Intercontinental Championship since he's most likely not going to be involved with the world title when everybody wants him to by Germany, by Bash in Berlin. Let him retain the title at Mania. Continue on with the longest reigning Intercontinental Championship reign. And then in the next couple of months into the summer when Chad Gable starts to rake up more victories on Raw, when Chad Gable starts to get back to number one contendership and builds more momentum and gets more of the audience behind him and this, that, and the third, then whenever you want, Money in the Bank, SummerSlam, they might do it in Germany itself. Imagine if Gunther goes over to Germany knowing he's going to be the babyface anyway and that's where they pull the trigger on Chad Gable. Some people may say it's a horrible idea, and I'm not saying it's a great idea. But imagine if that happened. Either way, no matter of the when and the where, Chad Gable is eventually going to beat Gunther. It is the obvious choice at this point, and the reason he is not going to WrestleMania to fight Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship is because it is not time yet. Then on the flip side, there's a whole nother discussion about, we don't want Sami Zayn challenging for the Intercontinental Championship because we want him to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship. That is a fair argument. And I will say almost the same thing with Chad Gable. You just got to be patient here. You just got to be patient. Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, those are some wrenches that got thrown into what I believe was probably Sami Zayn's spot originally back in the fall for the World Championship. I honestly believe that. Let's look at the next few months. Zayn loses to Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. Zayn is now back down to ground zero, while McIntyre, the guy who he had issues with back in the fall, the guy who took him out for a month, goes and wins the World Championship. Now we're into the summertime. Spring and summertime. McIntyre's defending on Raw. McIntyre eventually goes to fight CM Punk. Sami Zayn now has this his own build from the ground up story, just like Chad Gable. Victories on Raw, give him some TV feuds, this, that, and the third. Let me ask you guys something, and everybody's throwing this out there. I'm not breaking ground here. Where's Money in the Bank this year? Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Is Sami Zayn from Toronto? No, he's from Montreal, but it's in Canada. Again, as I said earlier, if location determined the winners, then a lot of things would be different over history. So Sami Zayn winning in Canada isn't a guarantee. But Sami Zayn could be winning Money in the Bank this year. And with Damian Priest holding the Money in the Bank briefcase still, I don't know when he's going to cash that thing in, but it's most likely going to be unsuccessful. And I think 2024 needs to be the year, now or never, that Money in the Bank is revitalized, especially for the men. I feel like the women, it hasn't been that bad. They usually cash in successfully. But the men, it's been some time since that Money in the Bank briefcase has felt important. And it's to no fault of the holders of the briefcase itself. It's just bad booking. So Sami Zayn losing to Gunther at WrestleMania, building from the ground up from there, possibly winning the Money in the Bank. But regardless of if he has that briefcase or not, slowly but surely, whether it's at SummerSlam, Survivor Series, or they even play the super long game and let Sami Zayn go from Mania to Mania and eventually win the World Championship against a Drew McIntyre, against a CM Punk who's turned heel, against whoever, that is the long game that I believe we are playing right now. Everybody asks for long-term booking until they get it. You gotta learn some patience. With Triple H especially, if you watched NXT Black and Gold during its heyday, and now we're seeing it tenfold on Raw and SmackDown. If you want good stories, if you want long-term booking, if you want your favorites to get the payoffs that they deserve, Gable winning the Intercontinental title, Sami Zayn winning the World Heavyweight Championship, those are extremely possible outcomes to happen this year. You just gotta be patient. You just got to be patient. Gable will defeat Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. It's just not going to be at WrestleMania 40. Why is it not going to be at WrestleMania 40? Because there's no plans for Gunther to lose the Intercontinental title just yet. Gunther isn't going into the world title program within the next few months. I'll be shocked if he does. I'll be shocked, honestly, if Gunther ends up in the world title match after losing the Intercontinental title at Bash in Berlin. Remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. All the Gable fans out there, don't take it out on Sami Zayn. Because if anything, Sami Zayn's just a stepping stone for Gunther to eventually lose to Chad Gable.